Welcome to part 6, creating tabs. In this section, we're going to create two tabs, one for the world data table and the other for the USA data table. And we're going to do so using this Dash Core Components library, which we alias as DCC. So this library contains all of these interactive widgets, such as checklists, drop-down menus, buttons, tabs, and others. So one thing to note in Dash, there are separate objects for the individual tab, as there are for the container for the tabs. So we'll see this down below. We will create individual tabs with dcc.tab and the container with dcc.tabs. So the first thing we do here is import the Dash Core Components library. And then we're going to create a function that will be able to create both individual tabs for our data tables. And let's take a look at the actual tab creation right here. So we're going to call this dcc.tab. This creates an individual tab, and the content for the tab, like what do you actually see when you click on the tab, that will go here. And this will be those individual data tables that we already created in the previous video. So we'll see the world data table or the USA data table. Anything can be the content. It could be a graph, it could be an image, it could be a div with lots of other content. So tabs can be, the content can be pretty complex. The label is just the visible, string that we see in our dashboard. The value is an internal value to reference it. And then ID and class name can be provided for adding CSS. Now what's cool here is that we can have a different class name whenever it is selected. So this allows us to apply different CSS styling based on whether it is selected or not. Okay, so these two lines of code actually call this function and create the tab with particular content. So the world tab, we're going to pass in the content, which will be that world data table. So we just created this in the previous video. The visible value that we'll see is world, and the internal value will be, lowercase world like this. For the USA tab, well, the content will be the USA data table. We will see this US states as the label, the visible label, and then we will use USA as the internal value. Okay, so let's go ahead and execute this. We've created our individual tabs. Now, to actually display the tabs, you have to use this dcc.tabs object, and then you pass it in a list of the individual tabs. So it's a little, you don't just create individual tabs and just use them. You create individual tabs and then pass them to this dcc.tabs container. So we also give it a class name and an ID. And then here's where we use the value. Okay, which one do we want to set as the active tab? Because you can't look at both tabs at the same time. That's the whole point of tabs in the first place. So we're going to say, hey, look at the world, and that's the value we created. So it's going to show that one. It's going to make that one the active tab. All right, so let's look at our layout. Again, we're just going to use this div and, again, have the title. And we're just going to, this single object will be the one that we place in our dashboard. So it'll be two objects, the title and then the table tabs. And then we will just execute this so we can see our dashboard. So let's look down below. Now we see, all right, we have a world tab and a USA tab, which has, the label USA states or US states. So this is the same data table that we just looked at. It just has these tabs above here. Now to click over to the USA, we get that data table. That's pretty cool. That's how you create the tabs for the dashboard. So the idea is create the individual tabs using dcc.tab and then pass these individual tabs to the dcc.tabs constructor as a list. All right, so that's creating tabs with Dash.